A few years ago, I was riding home from work on my motorcycle, and it's just a 10-15 minute ride across town in an urban area. I took a first turn onto that main road, and all of a sudden, there was a deer in front of me. And luckily, at that time, I'd been doing my parking lot practice, so was really good at swerving, really good at progressive braking, really good at doing all sorts of low speed stuff, and I was able to successfully swerve around that deer. So it was a split highway, 2 lanes going each way, and I knew there wasn't anybody in the other lane, so I darted over the other lane, started to slow down because I knew that deer travels in packs. But it was too late because there was more deer and there was nowhere to go. So I swerved around the first one successfully, slowed down a little bit, and just slammed into the next one. And as I got separated from the bike, as soon as I lost the view of the headlight, it was just pitch black. And I remember thinking, I guess this is my first motorcycle wreck. So I have this theory that the less control we have over an injury or a crash that happened, the more fear and anxiety it's going to cause later. I've been snowboarding most of my life, and I've taken so many slams. I skateboarded a lot here and there too, tons of slams, but most of those were my fault. And even though I've gotten injured worse snowboarding and sometimes skateboarding than I did that night I hit the deer, the motorcycle accident actually messed with my head a lot more because I'd done everything right and I still had the situation backfire on me and I ended up tumbling across the pavement. And, as I was sliding, all I was thinking was, I can't see where I'm headed towards. I don't know if there's cars behind me. I don't know if I'm going to get run over. Nobody's going to see me. And all I remember was like, I don't care how injured I am. I don't care if my leg's broken. I'm getting out of the road. I'm going to crawl out of the road if I have to. Luckily, I was mostly okay. I did hurt my knee. And this was about a week before my wedding, so I'll put a little picture up there. You can see that I have a cane in my wedding photos. It's because I hit my knee on the pavement so hard that it hurt for about 2 years. I did get it checked out. I didn't think anything was torn, so I'm guessing I bruised the bone or something. But anyways, I rode very regularly back then because I lived close to work. And again, it was only a 10-15 minute ride across town, which was kind of nice. And I had a little loop I could do to add a few minutes if I wanted to ride a little bit longer. It's just kind of a nice commuting setup. But I was also as prepared as I could have been to wreck, even though it was just a quick jaunt across town. I had an Arai on. I had a good climb jacket, separate back protector, the force-field one, proper riding pants, and proper riding shoes. So I accredit most of my non-injury to my gear. And I have no doubts that if I wasn't wearing all that gear, I would have been in the hospital because it was a pretty heavy hit. And for the longest time, because the longer you sit with the injury, right, the first thing you want to do in action sports if you get hurt is to get back up and try again. But with those injuries that you can't get right up from because you're really hurt, those are the ones that simmer and they sit there. And as you're recovering, you're like thinking about all the things that could have gone worse or all the things that you did wrong. And the problem with this deer incident is I had done everything right. I had practiced my swerves. I practiced my emergency maneuvers, my progressive braking. I wore proper gear, and I still got pretty roughed up. And that was hard to sit with because I didn't feel like there was anything I could have changed other than maybe not riding in the evening during deer season, even though it was in a pretty urban area where you wouldn't expect wild animals to be crossing at all. So that was a lot to process. And even though for most of my snowboard wrecks or skateboarding, I could just get right back up, this one messed with my head for a while because had I been knocked out or had I been more injured, I could have gotten run over. Again, when I lost sight of where the headlight was pointing, I had nothing. I couldn't see anything, and I assumed nobody could see me. So that was just a very terrifying situation to be in because there's so many different things that could have gone worse. And I didn't hit any fixed objects, no curbs, no street signs, no potholes, nothing. It was just a smooth slide. So there was so much more that could have gone wrong after that moment where things already went wrong and I was already tumbling across the pavement. And unfortunately, this wreck was the first one that really kind of fractured my intuition. I feel like it really messed with my instinct. Before I had that crash, I would really have a lot of trust in my instinct. Like if I felt good about riding that day, then I would just ride. If I didn't feel good about riding that day, then I just wouldn't ride. Very disciplined about listening to that gut feeling. There's been a couple days where I would start riding a little bit. I just have that weird feeling and I just turn around and go park my bike. And after my wreck, I feel like I really didn't trust my instinct much anymore. And I felt like my instinct and my confidence in myself and my ability to control the bike and read traffic all gave me a really false sense of security, essentially. And working through that took a lot of willpower. Because following that, there was days where I'd still have my instinct kick in and be like, okay, today is a good day to ride. And I would assess it. If I had a bad instinct about riding, I would look into, okay, what happened here? Did I get enough sleep? Am I fatigued? Do I just have a gut instinct, or what's going on? Because that instinct that used to be really clear started getting clouded by anxieties and fear. My mind would start spiraling. There was days where I would get all geared up. I'd go sit on the bike and I'd be ready to turn it on and start it up. And then I would just sit there and I'd just shake my head and I'd just put the bike back away. And I think that's actually helped a lot because it taught me that I was in control, that I don't have to ride if I'm having a bad day, that I do have some form of saying no just as much as saying yes. And it allowed me to mentally work my way back up to riding. There was some days where I'd do that and I'd get on the bike and I'd be feeling really, really good. And I would just go riding, and the more I rode, the more I felt like, I'm in control, like I'm safe, I know what I'm doing. That was just a freak accident. But there's also some days where I would get past that mental hurdle, get on the bike, start riding, and it felt worse. I felt like I was worrying about all these things out of my control, like irrational things, like somebody's wheel bearing failing in the lane across from me, and their wheel flying at me and killing me, right? Just things that I couldn't control. Or what if I hit a groundhog? Or what if I hit another deer? Or what if someone turns left in front of me because they don't see me, right? All these different things, just my anxiety would go, it was just a roller coaster for a while until it finally tamed down over time. But for a while, I feel like my gut instinct was clouded. It was hard to get back on the bike. And I really, really just had to take advantage of those days where it felt nice and it felt good again, because ultimately I didn't want to look back in 50 years and think, man, that ride really scared me out of riding. No, I wanted to keep riding. I wanted to keep making memories. I wanted to get back out there. I was patient with the process, but persistent in getting through it. And I think that's what really kept me going. There's no shame in stopping an extreme sport if something really shook you up and you have responsibilities that you're worried about. I know a lot of older guys that stop riding because they had kids and things like that. And there's really no shame in stopping. But for some people, including myself, just can't. There's a thirst for adventure there that is just insatiable. And no matter how bad the mental process is, sometimes I feel like some of us just have to keep going with it because it's just in our blood. It's in our spirit. I've been doing action sports since I was a kid, so I can't imagine myself not doing anything, and motorcycles were really important to me. So if you need to stop, absolutely no shame in that. But if you are determined to get back on the bike, just keep in mind that this is a normal process to experience this hot and cold, I want to ride, I don't want to ride, I'm excited about riding, but I'm afraid to ride. I've learned that, my intuition wasn't wrong. It's not inaccurate. It's just limited, like everything else. We all have our limits, and intuition or instinct or whatever you want to call it, that has its limits too. And what I learned from this wreck is that no matter how much you prepare, and you should still prepare, but no matter how much you prepare, how much you trust yourself, how much you think you're in control, comes a point where you have to recognize and accept that there are things that are just outside of our control, and that's just life, and you have to decide whether certain things are worth it to you or not. For motorcycling, it was worth it to me. I did get an airbag vest because I was quite a bit shaken up from that wreck, and I wanted to make sure I was better protected for if anything happens again, but it was important to me, so I kept going. The other thing I want to say is that, anxiety and fear did try to talk me out of riding for a while. My anxieties and my fears were telling me you're not in control and anything can happen out there. I had to remind myself that that is not entirely true. You can hold two beliefs at once. It is true in a way because, yes, I wasn't in control when that happened, but I also had to look at everything I did do, right? I was riding at reasonable speeds. I was practicing consistently in parking lots. So I got around the first deer and gave myself more time to slow down. Had I hit that first deer, full speed, that would have been a lot worse than what I ended up doing, which is getting around that one and slowing down. And then when I did hit that second one and I went across the pavement, right, I had full gear on. More of my actions that mattered. I was disciplined about always being geared up, even for the short rides. And so in retrospect, yes, there was nothing I could have done to prevent that. And it was completely at the mercy of whatever was going to happen that night. But I was in control of a lot of it, and my actions did matter. Gearing up mattered. Practicing mattered. All of that mattered. Fear and anxiety can try to tell you that none of that mattered. And I had to remind myself that even when things went wrong, everything I did mattered. Yeah, so I kept trying. I kept getting back on the bike. Even if I didn't start it back up, I kept trying to get back out there. There was days where I would go out and turn around still. And there were days where it felt amazing and I would go ride for hours. And I think that's normal. I think that's all part of the process. And the other thing I want to mention is that realistically, these fears and anxieties never actually fully disappeared. I feel like they refined my awareness on the road, and a lot of the anxiety turned into more hypervigilance and more awareness. It's not like I won't go fast, but now I think more about like where I want to go fast. I want to go fast near a tree line. No, don't. If it's open and I can see a mile out each way and it's farmlands and there's absolutely nothing, sure, open it up a little bit. Why not? But it made me think twice about these, where before my wreck, I was aware of them, but not like really strict on myself about like following those safety parameters. And one thing I did not do is wait around for the fear and anxiety to go away, because if you do that, it probably never will. Exposure to reality showing that your anxieties and fears aren't really serving you is really important. I wouldn't say I fully got over these fears and these anxieties, but I just grew with them because I wasn't going to wait for them to go away. Life is short, and it's not going to wait for us to feel better or to be perfect or to be completely healed. That's not really a thing. You just learn to work with what you got. If you have been in a wreck, I hope you got value out of this. I hope this helps you get through your own mental obstacles. If you haven't been in a wreck yet, be grateful, but understand that it can happen to anybody. It doesn't mean you should live your life in fear of it or avoid situations that can result in harm, but it just means you should navigate them as best as you can, because the possibility is real. And I think it wakes a lot of people up when it does happen, because we feel like we're in control so much, but realistically we're not. There's so many things that happen. Most bad things that happen to us are outside of our control. So it's not about denying that risk. It's about working with it, sitting with it, and accepting it and being calculated about it. Hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. I upload weekly. I'll be going through a lot more psychology as well as different gear in the near future here. And as usual, if you have your own story or any thoughts and concerns you'd like to share, please leave them in the comments below. I always try to get back to people. That's all I got for today. I'll see you next week.